Hello, welcome friends. So this video is a follow-up to my video I did last week, and when I was talking about cryptocurrency and when I was researching it, one of the topics that kept coming up is, will the stock market crash affect cryptocurrency, and then vice versa? Will the cryptocurrency crash affect stock market? And when I was doing my research, I mean, there was really no correlation, even though there are people that says one's going to cause the other. But anyways, I first want to say that all of these are my personal opinion and they are for entertainment purposes only, obviously. But let's start out with cryptocurrency. That's a really hot topic for a lot of people these days. And two of my favorite people are Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. And I just love their pessimism towards cryptocurrency, but they're still optimistic about the economy, the American economy, the government, everything like that. So even they will be the first to tell you that they're pessimistic about a lot of things. They still have most of their money tied up into stocks, and typically dividend producing stocks, meaning like the company they own, Berkshire Hathaway, but then Berkshire Hathaway owns stocks and other things. So anyways, that's what I was getting to about that. But let's just talk a little bit about kind of what their opinions are. One of the things that they said in a recent interview, they said that any investor, and they're talking about a typical investor, not a social media influencer, that invest in trading turds, is what Charlie Munger calls it. He says that they are highly irresponsible for gambling on cryptocurrency. So my whole thing with this is, guys, it's funny because when I was researching this, one of the videos I saw was about Garyvee, and he was talking about the macro and micro of NFTs and cryptocurrency. So that's what I want to get into. The macro of cryptocurrency is, yes, it is the future. There's no denying it. It's going to move forward. But the micro of it is, like I was telling you in the previous video that I did on this, is that 99% of cryptocurrencies are going to fail. Possibly 99% of the wallets. I don't even know how many wallets are out there, but we'll get into that in a second. But let's talk a little bit more about Garyvee. He's one of the biggest proponents of NFTs, which, if you don't know what NFTs are, they're non-fungible tokens, which is typically digital art. And I was just cracking up to myself about the name non-fungible tokens. Which fungible means, exchange for goods, like like money, basically, is a fungible token. And then non-fungible token, easily replicated. That's what I meant to say. But what they're saying is that their digital art cannot be replicated. But let's look into art. Let's look into how art is appraised, what makes it worth so much. So let's take, for example, the Mona Lisa. There's basically three things that makes art expensive. One is exclusivity. So if you look at the Mona Lisa, there's only one of them. Even though there's prints, if you try to make a fake Mona Lisa, I mean, people would just laugh at your face, just because it's so popular and so well known. But even like more expensive painters, like let's say Jackson Pollock, which people have said that a toddler can paint a Jackson Pollock, but when you go to analyze it, a fake Jackson Pollock, you're going to be able to see that it's not his, and for whatever reasons. So the second part of that is the difficulty. So if you look at Michelangelo, and when he did the statue of David, I mean, that's something that's really hard to replicate. Even a master sculptor could possibly do a replication of, and there are obviously at like different hotels and different locations, there are replicas of his art, but it is very difficult to replicate. And the third thing that causes an artwork to increase is just hype. I mean, so many artists, the term starving artists, is so popular because it's really hard to hype up an artist, to just make them popular. And some do, some don't. And I'm not an art aficionado. I'm definitely not an art historian. I don't even know like that much about art. I can look at an art piece and be like, wow, that's really beautiful. I can look at another art piece and be like, wow, that's really beautiful. And then this one will be worth $10 million and this one's worth $10. So I have zero concept of what makes an art piece expensive, other than those three things typically. But back to the point of what this video is about. And so when you look at non-fungible tokens and even crypto in of themselves, before we get into that, let's talk about just the history of money. I think anyone who is just let's just call them a crypto hyper, I don't know what to call them, has just never studied the history of money. Since its birth, since the very beginning of money, let's start with gold. Gold was one of the original metals, precious metals that they used to mine gold coins. But then when they realized that people were chipping off little pieces of gold, no longer making them exclusive, no longer making them 100%. So they would take off like 10% of it. Then the next guy would take off another 10%. Before you know it, you have a gold coin that is marked by the king or whoever made it. It's now 75% of what it was, what it's worth, because they used the gold and just melted the gold for its own value. So what they had to learn is, first of all, that gold coin was based on faith. It was a faith-based monetary system, saying, well, this was made by the king. But when people were stealing the gold, essentially, they realized they had to use worthless metals, and that's when they switched to all the other metals and different alloys and things like that. So that was the first lesson that the money producers had, was that you couldn't use a valuable source. We all, I'm sure you've heard stories of like during war times, they had to change a certain coin to a certain other metal, and I don't want to mispronounce or missay any of them, but I'm sure you've heard stories of that, like the nickel used to be made out of nickel, now it's made out of blah blah blah. I don't remember what nickel's made out of anymore, but that's a perfect example. So even when they moved to just regular coins, even those sources had to be worth a lot less than the coin that it was. The value of the coin is what I was trying to get at. So then when they switched to bills, very similar thing happened. And what's crazy about this is, if you study the history of bills, like each state had their own bill. The state of Texas had their own bill. The Confederate Army had their own bills. Everyone was able to print their own money source, or whatever you want to call it. And that's when the government and the regulators just stepped in and like, no, you can't print your own money. We are the only people that can print money. So that's what's going to happen eventually. Same thing happened with checks. Pretty much any company or any person could write a personal check. And what happened is people started making fakes. People started, if you've seen Catch Me If You Can, they became really hard to track. Because people were saying, oh, well, this is a check for $100, and then the bank would take it, or the company would take it, and then come to find out that the bank that it was written on didn't exist, or didn't have the money in it, or whatever it may be. So then they had to regulate checks. Then with credit cards, very similar. People were like, hey, how are we going to regulate? So they had to create a credit card system to regulate and monitor the credit card system. And that's what's going on right now with crypto. I am not a conspiracy theorist, but I was speaking to somebody hypothetically yesterday, and I said, hypothetically, if I was let's call it the World Bank, I would say, hey guys, I want you guys, basically they open sourced crypto to find out which would be the cheapest, the hardest to copy, the most efficient way to create crypto, and then just destroy the rest. I mean, that's what I would do if I was the World Bank. Am I the World Bank? No. Is that what they're doing? I have no idea. You can be the judge for yourself. And that's really all this video is for, just to kind of give you a different perspective. I have zero gain from this. I have no money in crypto. So that's definitely why. But I also want, like I said, I do read books on, I do watch videos. So one of the other things that's happening right now is I personally believe that if I was a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, but I kind of like to entertain the thought sometimes, is what's going on with the hyperinflation that it could potentially happen. If you study pre-war Germany, there was so much hyperinflation. Basically, any country that went into inflation, whether it's Zimbabwe or Venezuela in recent history, basically the government just starts printing out money. Right now they're doing it with unemployment. They did it with the stimulus package. My biggest fear is that they produce another stimulus or another thing, but I mean, they're still printing money right now, guys. Right now there's over 8 million people on unemployment, which is, I personally believe, has added to the labor shortage. Would you rather get paid not to work, or would you rather work for a smaller amount sometimes? So I think there's a lot of people holding on to their unemployment so they don't have to work, especially having to work meaningless jobs. In the past, I've waited tables to make extra money. I've done things like that, and I just think the people that were doing that before, and guys, I also managed restaurants for 12 years, and I would say 70% of my employees, that restaurant job was their second job, or at least not their only source of income. So that leaves maybe 20-25% of people had only one job. The rest all had multiple jobs. So I think what they're doing with all the labor shortage is just causing people, hey, I don't want that crappy job anymore. The pandemic taught them to tighten up their financial belt, or even like me, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna figure this out. I don't want to, take a meaningless job. I don't want to I don't want to work at a restaurant or things like that. So I just think millions of people are doing things like that. That's why, a lot of people are learning to work online, freelance stuff, and that's kind of what I do too right now. Just do some freelance marketing and things like that for local businesses, and anyways. But that's also what's led up to the supply chain breakdown. So there's just so many different things going on right now. But guys, like I said, in my last video, I actually do want to finish this one on a positive note, in that, we don't have to wait on a crisis. We don't have to wait for things to fall apart before we work on it. One of the things I did is, and I mentioned in the last video, is I use Revolut just so I can have international card. I'm in Mexico right now, and so what I love about my Revolut card is I'm able to take my money out of my bank account or my credit union instantly, and have access to a worldwide without having to pay for ATM fees, international transaction fees. So that's literally all I've used when I travel international is my Revolut card. So my home credit union and my home bank account are not accessible on internationally. A really cool thing right now is they have a $60 bonus when you join. So when you join, you get $60. You also get an instant virtual card. So what that means is, like, if you download it today, and you'll have instant access to a card that you can use instantly. So you can deposit money from your account, and let's say you needed to buy something online. They also have virtual disposable cards. So if you're looking at something you really want to buy, but you don't want to have hackers to have access to your card, you can use a one-time card and purchase that thing without having to put your own bank account at risk. So I really love that. Like I said, it's just an awesome app. They have really good fraud protection. The fraud protection has helped me out a couple times in that, and actually every time it wasn't fraud, it was just me a couple weeks ago, I went from, I'm in Cancun, and I went to Juarez, and then I went to El Paso. And so I used my card at the airport. I used it again on the flight. I used it again when I landed, and then I used it again when I was in El Paso. And so when I got to El Paso, it triggered my fraud. It was like, hey, what's going on? This guy's like doing, and they were all small purchases, so it's not like any of them were major. So I just had to open up the app and then say, hey, that was me. So it has really good fraud protection systems built into it, so I really advise it. And the other thing, guys, is like I was saying earlier with Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, they still own stocks. They still, so that's what I do. I still have some stocks. I'm definitely not a stock advisor. I'll buy a few stocks here and there, and I won't look at the purchase price. I won't even look at the ups and downs. I just kind of, every now and then I'll hear of a hot stock, and when I say hot stock, I mean like it's low, but it's still undervalued. And if I do happen to see it, I'll buy it. But I use Webull. You get 2 free stocks when you join them. So guys, I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, let me know. Like I said, this is just my own, I don't know what you're going to call it, a rant. But it's really just been on my mind all week. So that's why I finally decided to make this video. But if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. All right, thanks. Bye.